Hello, holy greetings, and welcome to the Keys of the Kingdom Holy Bible YouTube channel. My name is Christopher Sparks. I'm the translator of the Keys of the Kingdom Holy Bible. This is available on my website. I'll put the link in the description box below, the Keys of the Kingdom Bible.com. And now this is translated organically and grammatically so that words appear according to their underlying grammatical forms, and phrases appear according to their underlying grammatical forms, and they are not twisted by the pliers of Reformed theology or anything else to agree with mainstream religion. They are just presented bare and raw in their grammatical forms. Praise God. And it's much better this way. All the literary styles emerge. It's so much better. And this is not what goes on in the others, I can assure you. And that's what these videos have been all about. Also on my website is my booklet, Searching for Hell. This is about 90 pages examining this teaching about hell. And I'm here to tell you that if you want to try and find hell, well, searching for hell, if you can find Father Christmas, you can find hell. If you can find one, you can find the other. They're both fictions, and in fact, I find Father Christmas more believable because it does not involve the character of God. There is no word in the Hebrew or Greek writings of the prophets and apostles that translates as hell, meaning some place of torment where God tortures people in flames forever without relenting. There is no such number. It's not there. Now that 1611 Bible thing, that handbook of 1611 Anglicanism of King James, has in its Old Testament one word that it translates three ways, and that is Sheol, and it translates it as variously pit, hell, and grave. And in its New Testament it has three words that it translates one way, Gehenna, Hades, and Tartaru, and it translates them all as hell. But let's go back to the Old Testament, this word Sheol. You can check everything I'm saying. Please do. Please do. Somebody did when I put out this last year, this wording. Please check everything I'm saying. And it was a series of videos, and somebody came back putting in the comment section, I did what you said, checked everything that you were saying, and everything you said was true. Well, and now you can find this. What I'm going to tell you is true. This word Sheol occurs 65 times. 3 times that Anglicanism Bible of 1611 translates Sheol as pit. So 65 occurrences, 3 times as pit. 3 from 65 leaves 62. What did they do with the 62 remaining occurrences? Well, you'd think they would try and make some kind of discernment about how they were going to translate it. But no, they had an agenda. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll split it down the middle. So they translated it 31 times as hell and 31 times as grave. What sort of translating agenda is that? And it's not a coincidence. It's an agenda. Because in Isaiah 14, for example, they're alternating hell, grave, grave, hell. And in other places they'll translate it a certain condition as hell and the same condition elsewhere as grave. So they split it right down the middle. You cannot trust them. And now, in its New Testament, there are 3 words that they translate one way, Gehenna, Hades, and Tartaru, and they translate them all as hell. Well, Gehenna means the valley of Hinnom, and their first occurrence of this hell is in Matthew 5:21 and 22, where Jesus is warning about the injustice of the local Sanhedrin and how they commit people to the fire of the valley of Hinnom, the city's burning rubbish tip. But oh no, this Anglicanism document of 1611 translates it as hell fire. Well, that's not what it says. It says fire of the valley of Hinnom. It does not say hell fire. And it's not a threat by Jesus from what God will do to you. It's a warning by Jesus about the activity of the legal activity of the Sanhedrin, the local council. You can read this for yourself. And so that's Gehenna, it's Valley of Hinnom. Its Hebrew form is Gehinnom, Joshua 15 verse 8. So why did they translate Gehinnom as Valley of Hinnom, but Gehenna as hell? Agenda, hey? Right, the second word they translate as hell is Hades. Now, they translate it as hell, except once they translate it as grave, so they're inconsistent again. And one time they translate it as hell is in Luke 16. Now, here's the truth about Luke 16 for you. Oh, says the Christian, here's Jesus giving a real detailed explanation of what hell is like. And he went to hell. Well, first of all, he didn't. That's not true. He went into the grave, didn't he? He was buried in Joseph of Arimathea's grave. He didn't go to paradise. He didn't go to hell. He went into that tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, whom some say was his uncle or great-uncle, but I haven't researched that. I'm only repeating what I've read elsewhere. So, this Luke 16, Jesus tells a story of a rich man who dies and he wakes up in hell. And it's rather badly worded. I can't remember how it's worded now. In the 1611 handbook of King James's Anglicanism, for which you were persecuted if you didn't follow it, put in filthy dungeons. And so why was this man, this rich man, tormented in flames? Because he was rich. Oh, is that biblical? Wasn't Abraham a wealthy man? Well, and then there's the poor man in Abraham's bosom. Well, there's another fiction. Abraham's bosom is not a biblical concept. There is no such number. It's another invention, an occultic invention. But anyway, that's where Jesus is putting this man in this fictional story he's telling. And why was he comforted? Because he was poor. Well, Jesus did say that the Pharisees loved wealth and riches. They were money lovers. So, submit to our taxes. And yeah, if you're poor, don't worry. God's making you very holy. Oh, but what about you? You're gathering all this money. Oh, well, that's for... we've got to do our job, you see. Yeah, sure. So now, where does this story come from anyway, that Jesus was telling? A man in torments, in flame, who couldn't get a drink, who was calling across a chasm to a poor man who could get a drink. Well, that's a physical impossibility anyway. It exposes the whole thing as a fiction yet again. And this story has a fictional source. Now, you've heard of, I'm sure, the Greek poet Homer, and he wrote the Iliad, the story of the 9 Years' War, fought over Helen of Troy, a beautiful woman, and somebody nicked her from her husband, and hence the 9 Years' War. And it's a fictional account. It's not meant to be a truthful historical book. And then Homer's second book is the Odyssey. So this word Odyssey, it means a journey, and it's the journey home of one of the soldiers called Odysseus. And it's a fiction, just like the 14th century book Mandeville's Travels, of which I have an ancient copy. It's a travel fiction, meeting men with two heads and these sorts of things. And so the Odyssey is a fiction. These were not intended as truthful stories. And in Odysseus's return home journey, he's given, he meets the Cyclops and sirens and other fictional characters, and he's given a conducted tour through Hades. And guess what? Part of that story of his being guided through Hades, there is a fellow in torment, in flames, yearning for a drink, and water comes tantalizingly close, and then it's taken away. Tantalizingly close. Where do we get the word tantalizing? From Tantalus. That is the man's name in Homer's Odyssey. He's called Tantalus. And it's all described in here. I'll give you where you can find it in Homer's Odyssey. Tantalus. That's the story Jesus was telling in Luke 16. He was recasting a version of this ancient story from Homer of this man called Tantalus. But the Pharisees were teaching it as truth, to keep the people oppressed. You keep poor and you'll be holy. You be rich and you'll be punished. Then we can tax you up to your eyeballs. And then you have Christians saying, oh, look, here's Jesus explaining what hell was really like. Well, I don't think so. Jesus is recasting this old fiction story from Homer of Tantalus. Now, also in Searching for Hell, I describe something that happened to me the year after I was saved, and I was invited by an evangelical pastor to go for a walk with him across the Devil's Punch Bowl near Hindhead in Surrey in southern England. You can look it up, the Devil's Punch Bowl, Hindhead, Surrey. Hindhead, Hindhead. And that's where we went, and I was a new Christian and reading a Bible for the first time. I asked him about this hell, and he assured me it's true. And I said, what about my parents? They're good people. And he said this to me, as I tell in Searching for Hell. Your parents don't believe, so when they die, they're going to go to hell. And then you'll see what sort of people they really are. Oh, right. Well, I'd like to, he's gone now, probably in hell. And I'd like to say to him now, if he was still alive, my parents were better people than you will ever be. And so, I had a sister wrote to me recently, and she says this. I'm reciting this with her permission. I'm sitting reading your Searching for Hell book, and it came to my mind when reading about the struggle you had with your parents being such wonderful souls burning in hell, that my mum was actually murdered and she burned to death. And it's this that was my stumbling block. How could God burn her again after her suffering that horrendous death? I can't thank you enough for showing us all the truth. Peace be. Thank you. It was a stumbling block to her coming to faith in Jesus. Now she knows. that nothing like that happened to her mother. The stumbling block, the lie, is removed. Here's another one. Somebody else wrote, just bought Searching for Hell. Christopher, thank you for your works. Thank you for spending the time to study God's Word and putting it into its truest form for people like myself who struggle. God bless. Here's another one. Searching for Hell was a revelation of truth. Oh, how the blind have led the blind into a ditch. But of all the deceptions in this world, self-deception must be the greatest. When you don't know, as I didn't all those years ago, I didn't know. So yeah, I was being deceived, but it was not self-deception. When somebody explained to me that it's a fiction and a lie, I studied it out for myself, and I found what they were saying. These two men who were telling me, I found what they were saying to be true. So I was no longer in any deception. And so then, when you've been told, you are responsible. But if you're told and you refuse the lesson and you want to hang on to 1611 Anglicanism teachings and insist that they are of God, then you are in deception, you are responsible, and you are in self-deception. Well, that's what this brother was getting at. Of all the deceptions in the world, self-deception is the worst. I get asked sometimes, what is your favourite passage in the Bible? And I say straight away, Psalm 63 verse 3, your loving kindness is better than life. And that is the true character of God. Quick to forgive, merciful, and that is just as well. And I can testify that it's just as well for myself. Otherwise, I would have perished long ago. It's all falling away, people. Hell is exposed. The church religion is exposed. The church Bibles are exposed. Instead, God is restoring his truth, the teachings of his prophets and apostles. This is a wonderful time to be alive if you are a man or woman of God. Praise his name, and God bless you.